So Roger the alien from American Dad, he's like, I love your religion for the crazy. The virgin birth, water into wine. It's like Harry Potter. Only it causes genocide and bad folk music. That Roger, man, he comes up with some good stuff, huh? So I want to read some Frederick Douglass quotes. Just cause I don't know, he's a badass. I like the one quote that he spoke about how people will submit to. If you when you find out what level people will submit to, that is the injustice that will be put upon them. And so if they submit, then that's the injustice that will be put upon them. So here, just a different quotes that he says. I really like that one, and actually there's a speech that I'm going to talk about in a second after I read some of these quotes. So he's got this one here. It comes from the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. He says, I therefore hate the corrupt, slave-holding, women-whipping, cradle-plundering, partial and hypocritical Christianity of the land. I look upon it as the climax of all misnomers, the boldest of all frauds, and the grossest of all libels. Never was there a clearer case of stealing the livery of the court of heaven to serve the devil in. I am filled with unutterable loathing when I contemplate the religious pomp and show together with the horrible inconsistencies which everywhere surround me. We have men stealers for ministers, women whippers for missionaries, and cradle plunderers for church members. The man who wields the blood-clotted cowskin during the week fills the pulpit on Sunday and claims to be a minister of the meek and lowly Jesus. The slave auctioneer's bell and the church-going bell chime in with each other, and the bitter cries of the heartbroken slave are drowned in the religious shouts of his pious master. Revivals of religion and revivals in the slave trade go hand in hand together. The slave prison and the church stand near each other. The clanking of fetters and the rattling of chains is in the prison, and the pious psalm and solemn prayer in the church may be heard at the same time. The dealers in the bodies of many wreck their stand in the presence of the pulpit, and they mutually help each other. The dealer gives his blood-stained gold to support the pulpit, and the pulpit in return covers his infernal business with the garb of Christianity. Here we have religion and robbery, the allies of each other, devils dressed in angels' robes, and hell presenting the semblance of paradise. So this Frederick Douglass, right, one of the great liberators. He was an ex-slave turned speaker. And he said that was sort of what he was, his, I guess, call to fame was that he was the first ex-slave to turn speaker. But he's actually got so much genius, so much intelligence in the things that he speaks about. I've actually been told about this one book called Black Boy that I want to actually check out. And I've also heard that this one guy was sitting there defending Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong had executed like over 50 million of the Chinese proper. So he killed a ton of people, more than Hitler, more than Stalin, more than, well, maybe as much as Stalin. But there was something that he had actually said, how he looked at the state as sort of the violent father, and how he wanted his siblings and him to overthrow the state. And so perhaps Mao Zedong, the revolutionary, is different than Mao Zedong, the dictator. Kind of like Fidel Castro in some respects, and Che Guevara. Che Guevara kept his revolutionary stamp, trying to get revolution in Africa and trying to get revolution in Bolivia. And actually, Bolivia today has actually gone, leaps and bounds. They've elected a socialist president, a Native American, which actually looks like, 95% of the population. He's got land reform, and he's got a whole bunch of other things, a new constitution. So he's consolidating, his election. And you got like a pink tide flowing in, right? You got Venezuela, and you got, just some of the other nations that's taken on the mantle of socialism. And before, like in the 60s and 70s and 80s, there was anytime the Latin American countries would try to, become socialist, they elected, in Chile, they elected a socialist leader in 1973, and he got assassinated. And then the Chicago boys under Kissinger and Nixon was going to make the economy scream with the shock doctrine. And I think that's what we're seeing right now in America, with the 2008 crisis. There's a shock doctrine. At least that's what the Republicans are trying to do. Only they're trying to pass it off as, intelligence and the casino style gaming, the laissez-faire, let people do whatever the fuck they want to do. I mean, it's I'm not for sure how you think. If you just let the rich people do whatever they want, then poverty will be cured. Not really, not exactly. So I want to actually investigate a little bit more about Mao Zedong. I don't want to read Black Boy too, but let's more quotes. Here's his speech. But let's get some more quotes of Frederick Douglass. So Frederick Douglass, he's got a ton of badass quotes. He just has a ton of them. He says like, those who depreciate agitation, but wants victory and freedom, but depreciates agitation, are people who want crops without having to plow the fields. So there's a whole bunch of stuff he actually says. That's really cool. He says America is false to the present, false to, America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false to the future. So, where justice is denied, where poverty is enforced, where ignorance prevails, and where any one class is made to feel that society is an organized conspiracy to oppress, rob, and degrade them, neither persons nor property will be safe. So where justice is denied, if you look at this whole Eric Garner thing that's going on, that is justice denied. And that's a great thing about a revolutionary Che Guevara quote, that you can point out injustice wherever you see it. That is the good thing about being a revolutionary. And wherever justice is denied, and where poverty is enforced, where ignorance prevails, and where any one class is made to feel that society is an organized conspiracy to oppress, rob, and degrade them, neither persons nor property will be safe. That's also MLK. He said something, like that too, right? And a threat to justice anywhere, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So the soul that is within me, no man can degrade. So the person that is within me, no person can degrade. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. The white man's happiness cannot be purchased by the black man's misery. And I'll even go to the next step with the oppressors and the oppressed. You got the Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela, he's the one that says that America just doesn't care about human beings. And there was one article I read that was sitting there talking about how there are three main institutions that Americans just absolutely love, and doesn't matter what you do, the military, the police, and small businesses. So no matter what they do, the American people would just blindly back them. And they were making the argument that the reason why there's been so much backlash over the two police officers who got shot, right? Even Giuliani is saying that Obama's the reason, it's his fault, right? Obama said that Henry Louis Gates, that professor from Harvard who was trying to get into his own, he locked himself out of his house, and so he's trying to get into his own house, and the cop just started fucking hassling him and shit. And Barack Obama said that police officer acted stupidly. He did act stupidly. He acted very stupidly. And so, that's the reason, that's the hate. That's not the hate. He was talking about one incident, and he was right about it. And then he eventually has, that beer gate or whatever, where they have beers with one another and they mend fences and shit. So they have like a restorative circle. So that's what's causing all this. Nah, that's some bullshit. They asked him about, that incident. He said he knew about it, and he thought that the police officer in that incident acted stupidly. You think a police officer, just because he puts on a badge and a uniform, all of a sudden ceases to be a man? Any man out here is capable of good or evil. Any man out here. And so just to blindly back any type of police officer and any type of behavior that they do, it's ridiculous, So the white man's happiness cannot be purchased by black man's liberty. That's Nelson Mandela and also Paul Freire. The historical task of the oppressed is to liberate the oppressor as well as the oppressed. So the master is enslaved to their slaves because they got to stand over them, lord over them, tell them what to do. And so they are, enslaved in some respects. And both of them have a fear of freedom. The master likes to have that power over somebody else. And then the submissive need somebody to tell them what to do, right? They can't just control themselves. And so that's Nelson Mandela. As soon as he wins, the presidency of South Africa, they thought there was going to be just a sort of a mass genocide of all the white people, but said no. There's actually going to be sort of brotherhood, and so they're going to do something together. Invictus was a Morgan Freeman movie actually that talked about Nelson Mandela. And also think about Abraham Lincoln, though I don't know. I mean, and Barack Obama in some respects too. He won the election, and he could have had war crimes, tribunals for the past president, but he was saying he wanted to go forward, not backwards or some shit like that. But, justice denied, sort of like what he was saying. And then Lincoln, he did sort of, he played Dixie. As soon as they won the Civil War and there was the surrender at the Appomattox, they played Dixie. And so, he was sitting there saying that we are now brothers. We've been bitter enemies, but now we are going to accept them back into the country. Then he gets shot, and then you had Andrew Johnson, his racist policies, and then Reconstruction failed after 12 years. But Frederick Douglass, he made this speech in the 1850-something, so there was enough freedom for him to be able to speak up, and I bet he was, excited about Reconstruction and then was disappointed when it all failed. Without a struggle, there can be no progress. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. So you need to stop oppressing me. You need to stop doing what you're doing. It is not the light that we need, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but the thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. So that's just some sort of inspiration there. I prefer to be true to myself, even at the hazard of incurring the ridicule of others, rather than to be false and to incur my own abhorrence. I prayed for 20 years, but received no answer until I prayed with my legs. So he's saying that, prayer's kind of bullshit. He was sitting there kind of, talking about how there's so many hypocrites in Christianity, and you're supposed to be like good people because you believe in Jesus and God, and but really their actions and behavior doesn't mean anything. And that's why Pope Francis absolutely makes sense. He says that there's good atheists out there and there's bad Christians. There's people that's done bad things in the name of Christianity, and there's people that don't believe in a higher power and have led very, pious lives, have led very, good lives. I am that man. I feel like I am that man. And so it's weird whenever I talk to, a Christian, they can't seem to relate to me on the level of like talking about how Jesus, was a good guy, or about morality or anything like that, right? You're just supposed to believe and then you're just a good person. Nah, get the fuck out of here, right? It's about your behavior. It's about your actions. And you do have to have a good belief system too. One thing that I like about myself is my morality, but also I have a theory. I got a running theory, that I understand, and I got some Nietzsche quotes too. So if I got some time, I might just read Nietzsche later on. But the idea is I don't want to be a slave. I don't want to be a master. So I want to be an equalist. I want equality. And so what does equality look like, right? If you don't want to be the master, you don't want to be the slave, you don't want to be the oppressor, you don't want to be the oppressed. Well, what does that relationship look like? Are you able to, start a corporation, make money, do business? You need some type of organization, right? And every great movement needed its leaders and needed its platforms and needed the, the things that they wanted to change. But the in terms of equality, the only two things that I've came up with is to respect each other's consciousness. Right? This consciousness is wild. Like, where does it come from? And, we only have it while we're alive, and then it's, it goes away. So the idea that I can speak and then that you can hear what I'm saying and that you can, determine that it has some meaning or doesn't have meaning. And then the fact that you have consciousness and we all have conscious, we're all aware, right? So that's sort of what differentiates us from animals. Like, I don't know, a fly just sort of is instinctual. I had a couple flies in this house when I first got here, and every time I would eat like some soup, like I could let the fly be, but this one fly just kept on flying, like right on my fork, right? Just kept on coming back, and it had taste of food, so it just wanted to keep coming back, and then eventually, I had to get rid of it, but it was just instinctual. It wasn't conscious. It wasn't like thinking about what it was doing. It just says, ooh, food, and I'm going for it. I smell food. I'm tasting food. I'm hungry. I'm getting this food, and then that was it. We have those type of animalistic, instincts ourselves, But I think as human beings that we're actually evolved and we're like taking another step. And that's what I like about Nietzsche. Nietzsche says that, we need to be super people, super artisans, and, let's see what we can make man be, and so there's more to Nietzsche later on. So let's see, I prefer to be true to myself. Just be who you are, right? I prefer to be true to myself, even at the hazard of incurring the ridicule of others, rather than to be false and to incur my own abhorrence. I prayed for 20 years, but received no answer until I prayed with my legs. I didn't know I was a slave until I found out I couldn't do the things I wanted to do. I hope I actually come across this one quote where he's just sitting there talking about how once he was educated, freedom was just this persistent thing that just kept on popping up. He just could not accept his, sort of subhuman station as just being an animal. Freedom just kept coming up. No, I don't want to be just a fucking slave. I'm an educated man, and I want to be free. The thing worse than the rebellion is the thing that causes the rebellion. So people want to talk about, I don't know, you can actually use that for a whole bunch of things. But you can use it for the American Revolution. You can use it for the Civil War. You can use it for the protest that's coming up out of Eric Garner's murder and the subsequent, denial to process him. Right? If you go jaywalk and a cop says you jaywalk, you're going to get not only indicted, you're just going to go straight to trial. And you'll have to get a bench trial or a jury trial or some other type of, you'll get justice. That supposedly that's a crime against humanity or some shit, right? You don't have a seatbelt on, you're jaywalking, that will go to court. But if you're a police officer and you murder, a man on camera, that don't go to court. Nah, there's no probable cause of a crime happening, but you got a dead body. Nah, there's no probable cause. Nah, get out of here. That's crazy. So, with a jaywalker, what evidence do you need? Just a cop's word. That's all you need. You don't need videotape. You don't need to see blood on their hands. You don't need any of that stuff. And yet, if you're a police officer and you murder a person, you automatically just get by with it, right? It don't even matter. Yeah, oh, what? You murdered somebody. You got blood on your hands. There's videotape evidence of it. Nah, no probable cause. Go on. Get out of here, you crazy kid. Fuck you. That's a crime. That's murder, okay? So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. That's how you test if justice prevails. If one person hurts another person, then justice needs to happen. And it doesn't matter if you have a badge or if you have no badge, If one person injures another, that's the whole point of law. The law is to prevent injury of life, limb, or property. So if you injure another person, then the law is supposed to, and then the rule of law means that nobody is above the law. So politicians aren't above the law, the police aren't above the law, bankers, the wealthy, nobody is above the law. That's what the rule of law in a true democracy actually means. Then we don't have that. Julian Assange says the rule of law is dead. I think democracy's dead also. We got the vote, and that's really all we got. We don't see any democratic processes anywhere. Not in the workplace, not in the home, not in our schools. It's just totalitarian fascist dictatorships. In fact, teacher training schools teaches you that you must get 100% compliance. So 100% compliance, that is the level. If you submit quietly, that is the level of which injustice can be put upon you. I remember in high school, I did well, straight A's, valedictorian. And you had Mary Beth Flynn, who basically was friends with the school counselor, and then there was I had a good scholarship. They asked me about the scholarship, and I wasn't interested in it. I was like, I'm not for sure if I want to do that. And she was like, okay, and threw it right in the fucking garbage, right? So that's the injustice that will always be perpetuated upon you. And she didn't like me because I would speak up, or sometimes I would fall asleep in her fucking boring ass fucking class. And she didn't like that shit. So what the fuck, if you ain't so damn boring, you didn't say, I remember one time she said about freedom of speech, she goes, what is the First Amendment to the Constitution? I raised my hand, freedom of speech. No. Okay. So she's lying, right? She's a dictator. She's telling lies, and we just have to believe her fucking lies. And recently, at the Valley High School in Louisville, there's this woman who I was co-teaching with who was just a bully. That's all she did, was just bullied everybody. And that's the thing, when you manipulate everybody, they're going to be manipulated for the rest of their life. But she's sitting there talking about the Gilded Age. And she's talking about how J.P. Morgan invested this much money, how great Carnegie was, how great, Rockefeller was. She's going to have a hard time talking about child labor and bad working conditions and how, the Homestead strike, the Pullman strike, the great railroad strike of 1877. How are you going to mention that type of shit, right? Carnegie fucking takes off and he has Fisk just kill all these strikers. Oh, we forgot to mention that shit. Oh, yeah, good man Carnegie is. Let me fucking tell you. No. The banking industry, we are so focused on the financial industry right now. We're losing our manufacturing base. So I can understand, you got to build the industry. You got to build the thing. But I just don't understand why treating people like humans and making money are the opposites. Why are they opposed to each other? It makes no sense. You can treat people like humans, give them a decent livable wage and at the same time make money. FDR, he says that is what fascism is when the government and business gets together. FDR also says that, he also says that if you have a job where you cannot pay a livable wage, then that is, that's a wrong. That job should be illegal. If you have a job, supposedly a job, and they cannot, pay for their own life, that shit should be illegal. And that absolutely is fucking true, right? You got to pay your rent, your electric, and all this other shit. And if you ain't got a job that can pay for that, right, you're just making somebody just pick up rocks or some shit all day long, and they can't fucking pay for that, because you're paying them fucking, pennies on the fucking dollar. People say free market, right? You make your choice. You can just quit, do something else. Yeah, we're cheap labor, right? Mitch McConnell and shit and companies back in fucking power. He's been in power for 36 fucking years. The poorest state just elected the richest senator. And it's all for the corporations, the wealthy, and the bankers. All the financial industry fucked the economy with the casino-style gaming type of laissez-faire capitalism in 2008. And you got Norway, you got Denmark, you got Germany, you got a lot of European nations that's doing capitalism and they're doing socialism much better. People have higher standard of living, people are happier, their export rates are incredible. So, they're able to produce, mass quantities of stuff, take care of their own. They got free college, universal health care since 1871. Germany has had universal health care since 1871. We just now got like some kind of insurance, buyout, right? Germany had universal health care for over 100 fucking years in the 1800s during the Gilded Age. So I think it's a problem when you're teaching history and, you don't point out the similarities. People say that, I've read this one article that said that we're living in the second Gilded Age right now. And so if you're learning how great the big bankers were, how pious and how they provided jobs and they were such good fucking guys, right? You're not going to give a shit. You're going to think that these fucking paymasters are the motherfuckers that's going to get you out of your fucking rut. And frankly, if you want freedom, if you get a good paying job, the money can give you some freedom. I'm not going to deny that. But true freedom would be starting your own business, doing stuff you love to do, getting paid to do what you love to do. That's true freedom. So let's keep on going with some of these quotes. The thing worse than the rebellion is the thing that causes the rebellion, right? Slavery and the bullshit with the Civil War, the British fucking empire and all their fucking, bullshit. That was worse than the actual rebellion. Supposedly, I don't know. I guess I'm the Haitian Revolution, the true revolutions would be the French Revolution and the Haitian Revolution. And I'm glad that those things are actually uttered in the same breath as the American Revolution, because the Americans did not support the Haitians in the revolutions. They actually gave money and uniforms to the French, and then also, which is fucked up, Then also the same shit with the French Revolution. They declared neutrality, but they still did business with the British. And then eventually France thought that was something. And so there's this quasi-war with U.S. and France out in the fucking seas and shit. So, when they said we're doing revolution, they wanted everybody to be on their side and shit. And then when these, other places had revolution, they said, fuck your revolution. So we've only had one revolution, but I don't even know if you could consider that one a revolution. It forgot women and blacks and Native Americans and any white men that didn't have property and everybody that was under 21 years old. So the vast majority of the population was left out. So how's that a revolution? It changed shit, right? You got a Bill of Rights and the Constitution, and the empire was thrown out. But that's the same thing Korea, that's the same thing Vietnam did. They kicked the fucking empire out. So they're the revolutionaries. And I think if you looked at the 1900s across the world, the whole, capitalism versus communism thing, the communists are the ones who fought for the poor and the people, and then the capitalists were the ones who was for the dictators and the bloody fucking psychos and the big business people. So I think in terms of hearts and minds around the world, communism had won. But if you look at the people, the main players on the stage today, capitalism has won, and nobody even especially in American politics, even talks about communism ever coming back. I'm one of them, to be honest with you, because I believe in sort of a social democracy, but not full-on communism. I think people would be better off if they had their own piece of land instead of everybody just being lumped on top of each other and making, food for the rest of the people. So I do believe in some freedom of the market, but I believe also that we have a right to life. And so therefore we should have a right to eat and to live and to be warm, to have shelter. So you have a right to life. How can we, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is what we're guaranteed, right, by the Declaration. And life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. If you don't even give us life, how are we supposed to get liberty? How are we supposed to have pursue our own happiness? You didn't even give us life. We got homeless people that die on our streets. We got lots of kids who are in poverty, and that says food stamps. The child poverty rate has actually risen, and that's really the most obvious sign that capitalism has failed. Pure capitalism has failed because you have poverty, you have pollution, you have lots of things of when you just allow the rich people to do whatever the fuck they want to do. They don't give a shit if they pollute. If they can get away with polluting, then they'll say, hey, that's the price of doing business, you son of a bitch, right? We fucking polluted your stream and you drunk it because you was downstream, and fuck you. And, so it doesn't solve pollution. It doesn't solve poverty. That's when you got to have some social elements to it. And really, just having two ideologies, pure capitalism is what we're supposed to do. We don't even do pure capitalism, when it comes to marijuana, when it comes to prostitution. There's things where we don't do, the market, there's a demand for it. And actually, capitalism says when you ban something, it rises the price of it. So it doesn't stop it. If anything, it only creates more of an incentive for people to do it, because not only will you make some money, you'll make a ton of money, right? So there's more of a greater incentive. You had Mayor Fisher that was sitting there saying that he didn't want to raise the minimum wage because he knows how economics works. Now, if he knows how economics works, then he should legalize prostitution and legalize marijuana if he knows how the economy works, which perhaps he does. Perhaps he would actually be into something like that. But again, we're not even doing capitalism very well. And if we don't even acknowledge to have some type of social safety net, right, like the Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, these programs are things that people love and they really like, and they could get better, right? They could be better programs. And food stamps, and there's housing projects. Those were successful endeavors. They provided housing for people that needed it, fed people who need it. Those are good things. The federal government is the one that pays for the food in the schools. We got education. That's socialism, right? That's communism if there's only two ideologies for you. Communism is just a pure state of socialism, right? And it depends if you're talking about Karl Marx, who was a theorist, or talking about Lenin, Stalin, and Trotsky and those boys, right? Who took the state and implemented what they thought to be communism, and they had farm collectives and massive genocide and a whole bunch of other shit that is really bad. It was really fucking bad. But I don't hate the idea of one of my elected officials or one of my leaders giving a shit if I live or die. That's nice, right? Healthcare, that's all their health is a human right. Health is a human right. So if healthcare is a human right, the fact that our government has been denying it to us when Germany has had it in 1871, that just means they don't give a fuck about our lives. This Frederick Douglass talking about how there's a conspiracy, for people, right? When justice is denied, poverty enforced, ignorance prevails, and where any one class is made to feel that society is an organized conspiracy to oppress, rob, and degrade them, neither persons nor property will be safe. So, as long as you keep fucking people over, people and property are not going to be safe. So, let's keep on going with some of these quotes. I prayed for 20 years until I prayed with my legs. Prayer doesn't do shit, right? You talking in the corner by yourself, right? He said he prayed with his legs. He got action. Action is when you actually get change to happen. He says, I'm a Republican, a black dyed-in-the-wool Republican, and I never intend to belong to any other party than the party of freedom and progress. So that's amazing. That's incredible, right? That's not the Republicans today. The Republicans, after LBJ signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, he says that the Republicans were going to take the South for the next, so many decades, and that's exactly what the fuck happened. So at some point, the Republican and Democratic Party fucking switched. And I would say 1964, Civil Rights Act, but why? Why? What the fuck? What happened to the damn Republicans, right? They were the party of Lincoln. Lincoln got, made slavery illegal, abolished slavery, got black people freedom. And then eventually, the whole fucking experiment fails after 12 years. Slaves are generally expected to sing as well as to work, right? So you're expected to submit and to be happy. Hey, go do that. Go pick that damn cotton. Yes, massa. If you want me to know. No, you'll pick the cotton and you'll be happy. You understand? Okay, massa, I sure love picking this cotton. Oh, picking cotton till the day of dawning. La 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 la. Fuck you, man. Now that's some bullshit. I have to be obedient and be happy. Fuck you. If I do submit, I don't have to be fucking happy. And if I want to be happy, I can be happy. Fuck you. You ain't gotta tell me what my fucking mood is. A battle lost or won is easily described, understood, and appreciated, but the moral growth of a great nation requires reflection as well as observation to appreciate it. A little learning indeed may be a dangerous thing, but the want of learning is a calamity to any people. No man can put a chain about the ankle of his fellow man without at least finding the other end fastened about his own neck. Again, masters and slaves, oppressors and the oppressed are enslaved to each other. So if you have to be, if you go back to the antebellum South, right, you have massa and you have the slaves. Well, as soon as massa walks away, what are the slaves going to do? Whatever the fuck they want to do, right? So they're going to just fucking play and not do shit. And so massa has to stand over them and watch them work the entire fucking time. He is chained to his slaves. It's a total different slavery than pure fucking slavery. Don't get me wrong, right? But it's a fucking shitty fucking job to always have to stand over a motherfucker. Frankly, even if I was to be a boss of my own corporation, I'd want to be like, hey, here's the deal, here's the contract, and just let him go. If you can do the contract and do the deal, then we can make money, right? You could be, you're an investigative journalist. Go out there and get some information. Go out there and get the news. You get some information, you get the news, you get paid. You do your thing, but just what we had agreed on that you would do, and then you can do whatever you want to do, right? Any type of news, anything you want to do, you get to do it. And so it would suck to actually have to fucking lord over a motherfucker. Hey, did you get that thing I told you to get done? How come you didn't get that thing I told you to get done? That would just suck. That would suck to have to press on somebody, and also suck to sort of be that person that has to always be told what to do, right? So man's greatness consists in his ability to do and the proper application of his powers to things needed to be done. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet to depreciate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. If you want to raise crops, the ground has got to be plowed up. So find out what any people will quietly submit to, and you have the exact measure of the injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. That quote is amazing. I love that quote. I keep coming back to that quote whenever I'm talking. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have the exact measure of the injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. So if you submit, right, you go pick the cotton, you're a student, you listen to the damn fucking teachers and shit, you're a worker in the fucking, working class fucking position of just doing stupid shitty labor, and you always fucking quietly submit to that type of bullshit, then injustice and wrong can be put right on top of you. And that's the exact measure. So every time I yell at this motherfucker, he goes and picks the cotton. Ha ha ha. So anytime I fucking yell at him, I could just say, hey, you're not going to get paid for the cotton. Nah, I know you worked all fucking year, but you ain't going to get paid. That's my motherfucking childhood right there. Are you fucking kidding me? Hey, boy, do this. Hey, boy, do that. Hey, boy, do this. I was going to pay you, but now I'm not. What the fuck? You know, if you get straight A's, I'll get you a car. Well, I didn't really mean a car. I meant getting you this old fucking beater that I have. Well, then I just don't get me one. Fine, you don't get a car. Fuck your 13 years of straight A's, bitch. Now, what you gonna do now? I fucked you over. Ha 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 ha. The oppressors, right? The fact that teachers want 100% compliance and the fucking parents are beating the fuck out of their kids. They work in tandem. They work hand in hand. Teachers like, hey, if you don't do as I say, I'm going to call your parents and they'll beat the fuck out of you. You want to get beat the fuck out of? I bet you every damn teacher here, they have to use all these other tactics, right, to fucking manipulate people. But I guarantee you, if they had their choice, they would just like to beat the shit out of the fucking kids. Just fuck those kids up, right? No, not call your parents. No, not try to talk down to you and make you fucking force you into compliance. And that's the thing, right? Even Hitler couldn't get 100% compliance. So people might not get all they work for in this world, but they must certainly work for all that they get. You know, there's thieves out there. There's the banker. Someone says, you know, give a man a gun, he could rob somebody else. He could rob a bank, right? But give a man a bank, he could rob the world. So if people are thieving and stealing out here, so, you know, you can work hard, get the stuff that you believe is yours. And if people fucking take that shit, you might not get all that you work for. But the only way that you'll fucking get that shit is by work, okay? So at a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. That's a good religious argument, you know. George Carlin says you must smash these people. That's how you can only get anybody to the next level when it comes to religion. You must smash them. You must smash them into compliance. You must force them to do exactly what it is you told them to do. And so, you know, what I know, it's not smash them, not fucking make them obedient or whatever, but if you try to talk to them nicely, well, if you thought about this, you know, the letter J didn't come up until 500 years ago, so, you know, how could there have been a Jesus? Well, what if it was just a story made up by Constantine? Well, you know, I just believe in God, and my mama believes in God, and I go to church, and there's this one time, I swear I saw a ghost or some shit. That was God. God was right there on my side. I swear God was right there. No kidding. God was right there. Huh? Yeah, I swear. Or they feel sad that they lost their loved ones. And their mom, I love my daddy. My daddy was dead and now I'm never going to see daddy again. Don't you worry. And the angel got his wings. Oh, okay, I'm going to see daddy when I die. And I can't wait to die so I can see my daddy. I'm going to die and wait to see my daddy. I'm not living for this life. I'm living for the next life. You fucking nuts, dude. Live for this fucking life, you fucking psycho fucking weirdo motherfucker. Your dad's dead. He ain't coming back. Get the fuck over yourself. Get the fuck out of here. You know, so something like that is just so fucking clear to me. It's such fucking bullshit, right? If you just ask a religious person, a Christian, just ask them why they don't believe in Islam. Ask them why they don't believe in other sects of Christianity. Why don't you believe in Mormonism? Why don't you believe in Scientology or Buddhism or all these other religions out there, right? Mithraism or Krishnaism. Why don't you believe any of this stuff? Oh, well, you know, it's dumb. It's such bullshit, you know. Fucking Scientology, they got a spaceship, and you know, Joseph was like dug up some tablets, and then nobody knew what the tablets were, only he knew what. You know, and Christianity is the same bullshit. It's the same shit, right? There's a woman, she miraculously just has a baby, right? Nobody fucked her, she didn't have sex with nobody, just popped out a baby. Well, that's because God impregnated her. You know, he warned her with 3 angels. He raped her, right? And then God and Jesus is the same person. So basically, Jesus raped his mother, had himself, and then he got crucified, and now he's like, and that's weird. Is God and Jesus like side by side talking to each other? Or are they like one being now, right? Now Jesus is dead. Are they back to being one thing? The Trinity is all, God and Jesus is the same thing. You fucked up. You're in a mental fucking illness. You have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. You're making up dumbest shit in the fucking world. So when something like that, scorching irony, smashing their argument is way fucking better than trying to convince them. You can't fucking, you can't be nice about it. You have to basically say, look, you're absolutely wrong. I don't believe what you're saying. This is my beliefs. Bam, there it is. So either you can believe what the fuck I was saying, or you can just be a dumb fuck for the rest of your life, right? I'm sure there's other dumb fucks that'd be like, no, you're right, honey. There is a God. And if you want your man to love you, he's got to love God in order to get to you, okay? No, he's got to love God by what our preacher says. And then, and my daddy and my mama. And then once, you believe in the stupid shit they believe, then you're good. You're good. You're in like Flynn. So I got to adopt your fucking mental illness just to be happy, just to be in a fucking relationship with you. I got to adopt your mental illness. It almost feels like pussy is God. That's what you're telling me, right? If in order to get to you, I got to find God. Well, I really want your pussy. I really want to fuck. So, all right, I'll believe your insanity. Sure, why not? No, that's so fucked up. America is false to the past, false to the present, solemnly binds herself to be false to the future. There's some fucking truth to that. Noam Chomsky was talking about how race in America, how basically black people have only had a few decades of freedom, right, since the 60s. So what, 4, 5 decades that they had freedom? And that's it, just a moment. And there was Reconstruction, which was 12 years. So there was 12 years of Reconstruction where the occupation was enforcing the newly freed peoples their liberties and their rights, giving them foods and giving them lands and a whole bunch of shit. The Freedmen's Bureau was a fucking badass sort of, not just a welfare program, but like a land redistribution program. There's a free soil party. There is the Homestead Act, right? Abraham Lincoln was liberal. He fucking changed society like a motherfucker. In fact, some people said that that's the second revolution. And that makes sense to me. That was revolutionary. That changed society. Revolution is a funny word, to be honest with you, but like, you have Aristotle, he says that a change in leadership or constitution is also a revolution. So you can, Malcolm X says you gotta smash the system, overthrow the system. That's a revolution. And that is a revolution. There will be change that happens after that, but you don't know if there's going to be good or bad change that happens. So you can smash the system, but it's all about the workings right after the system is smashed. And you can elect new leadership that changes the system, right? That changes the leadership, and it depends on, what they do. You can get a brand new constitution that changes the rules to the game. So that's going to create a brand new system. So you can have lots of different types of revolutions. And revolution is just circle. It just means things go around or whatever. Thomas Jefferson says we need to have a revolution every 20 years or so. And we haven't even really had one revolution, right? Like, I don't believe the American Revolution it was more of a war for independence. 7-year war for independence. A lot of fucking Americans died for that war. And if they try to run out of the army, Washington would kill that motherfucker. So, he also had slaves and he killed Native Americans. So they were against, the majority of the rabble, the poor people. They didn't give a fuck about the poor people. The Civil War, there's something so great. There's something revolution. The Civil War changed every goddamn thing. It changed every fucking thing. And I like the Civil War. I like how it changed. I think, when I think about the evil that slavery is, that is a good ass fucking thing to smash. So good for Lincoln for doing that. Whereas I don't like dictatorships or totalitarian fascism, to smash the evil that is out of the, I like that. I like the strong hand of actually fucking, and actually I like the way, I like how Lenin took power too and just says, I'm going to get communism for everybody. But since we're in America, if we try to do any type of shit like that, that would just be a bloodbath, right? The cops and the military, everybody loves these guys. And so you can't, they know exactly what to do if you was to try to do violence. And somebody was, Francis Fukuyama was talking about the end of history. And so the end of history, they're sitting there talking about how the end of history was how neoliberalism, capitalism, and democracy has prevailed. And that's not neoliberalism. That's what we call capitalism and democracy fused to get neoliberalism. But I thought liberals were bad, but we call the capitalistic system that we're in neoliberalism. We are not defining our terms very well. But it failed, right? Or it succeeded. Neoliberalism is, all these countries the dictatorships are falling. Democracy is being implemented. People like the idea that they get to choose their own leaders. They get to be part of the decision-making process. Who wants to be oppressed? Nobody does. You don't want kings and queens and monarchs and sort of hereditary fucking leaders just doing whatever the hell they want to do. And so, the people are getting democracy. And so there's elections, right? That's really all democracy means around the world, or at least because that's all it means in America. But whenever we go invade like Iraq, we don't even put our style of Byzantine democracy there. We have like a parliamentary system. We actually have like a system that's more, more just and equitable. But Francis Fukuyama, he talks about the end of history, and he was kind of sounding like all depressed and was like, "Oh man, we have the end of history. No more great Che Guevara's. No more great World War II's. What are we gonna do? We're gonna trade more democracies and capitalism, and it's what won. It's what won, and that's what everybody's gonna do." And so, that's unfortunate. That's really unfortunate because the it's not unfortunate. It's kind of liberating in some respects, but it's unfortunate that he was sad about it. But it's liberating because since the end of history happens, we don't have to have these wars. The nuclear fucking arms race just scares the shit out of enough people that no, you don't want those shit to proliferate. You want some type of order. You don't want that, anybody and everybody to have a fucking nuke, right? Some people with the Second Amendment remedies and that type of fucking rhetoric, I bet they would want a nuke. I bet they would want to fucking own themselves a nuclear weapon because the argument is an armed population will never submit to a tyrannical government. So you have to have as big a guns as the government has. And so if you believe in that, philosophy, then you probably would believe in saying that you are allowed to have nuclear weapons. And anyway, so whereas we can blow up all the world and all of humanity, right? There was a big get under your desk, duck and cover, scare in the 50s, right after World War II, once everybody had the nukes and we dropped it on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and everybody's like, holy fuck, they're going to do that shit to us. Holy shit. Well, there's some respects that it's good, end of history, that shit isn't going to happen. But I think it's also, well, no, I'll go with that. It's good because we can have, elections and we can use constitutional reform. We don't need to do it by the gun. We don't need to say, it's time to get bloody and time to be violent. You can get peaceful revolution. You can change society and not even just reform. I mean, a constitutional convention changes the rules. I don't know if you've ever played like the game of life. When you come out with the brand new game of life and it's like the board is all different. There's different pieces, different fucking options and shit. It's a different game. It's a different game, And so if you change the rules to the game, that's going to change society. If you get new leadership who wants to change things, that's going to change society. I don't know any leader that doesn't want to change something. Either they want to change it for the corporations and bankers so they can make all the fucking money that they want, or they want to change it, to be more fair for working class peoples, middle class peoples, the poor, which rarely gets discussed. It didn't even get discussed in the Democratic election, right? The middle class, the middle class, the middle class, the poor don't fucking vote. And that was the problem sort of with healthcare in Kentucky. All these red states get all these poor people who got healthcare now, and the fucking political establishment or the people that talk all a bunch of bullshit, I guess the fucking poor people in red states don't admit that they take any type of welfare. They don't admit that they got food stamps. They don't admit that they take LIHEAP. They don't admit that they have health care. And because they don't admit to it, and also because they don't vote, their fucking voice don't matter. That's the only type of democracy, and that's the only type of say-so that we have is the vote. And so if poor people and young people, 30% is the turnout rate in Kentucky, right? So if these people are not fucking voting, then that means that they won't get a say-so. And so to give them health care, they need it the most. And they, I think the idea of the political perspective is that middle-class people care if poor people are doing okay. And so, the middle-class voters care if the poor are doing fine or not. But frankly, everybody needs to be fucking voting. If everybody fucking vote, I think we'd have a better fucking system. Okay, so find out just what any people will quietly submit to. The bankers doing as the fuck as they want to do. Politicians taking your tax dollars. Cops fucking beating you up and being unjust. If everybody quietly submits to that shit, that's just going to keep on happening, right? And it even goes on to say either words or blows is what's going to change it, right? Hey, you got to stop this bullshit. And so if there is not words or blows, then it won't fucking stop. So that's why I actually want to read the quote or the whole fucking speech, because I bet the whole fucking speech is just a badass, thing to talk about. So people might not get all they work for in this world, but they must certainly work for all they get. I recognize the Republican Party as a sheet anchor of the colored man's political hopes and the ark of his safety. To suppress free speech is a double wrong. It violates the rights of the hearer as well as those of the speaker. So that idea is like, the minority get their say and the majority get their way. The minority could say some fucking badass shit that is very right and very, shit needs to change. But if you don't give them the fucking option to say that, then the speakers, as well as the hearer, they're both fucking deprived. So the person who's got viewpoints, they should be allowed to say what their viewpoints are. And if they don't, then you're actually depriving, whatever ideas could come out of the minority's perspectives. So that's a couple of Frederick Douglass quotes. I think I'll go to the next one here. This is let me give you a word about the philosophy of reform. The whole history of progress of human liberty shows that all concessions yet made to her august claims have been born of earnest struggle. The conflict has been exciting, agitating, all-absorbing, and for the time being, putting all other tumults to silence. It must do this, or it does nothing. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without the thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one or it may be a physical one, and it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them, and these will continue till they are resisted with either words or blows or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. So there's so many actually quotable lines just out of that shit right there. Power concedes nothing without it. There's like fucking 5 quotes right there. And he just back right after another, right? But he's sitting there saying that basically, without the slave saying, yes, master, I'm going to pick the cotton. If you don't have the oppressed.
Dare I say, as big as a house.
What is this? There is something else going on in one of my pages. It's probably this one. Yeah. Okay, so the point is being, if you submit to that, then that'll be the level that, it's wild to think that in a classroom you got 30 students and one fucking teacher and they're able to manipulate everybody, right? Well, all of them are in the same game. The parents, the teachers, the principal, they're all on this fucking obedience, compliance, shut your damn fucking mouth, you stupid ass. That they're all on that fucking controlling, dominating bullshit. And so the limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. As long as they keep on going out picking cotton, then the slavery will continue. In Django, there was a point that was made that, it made no sense how the Uncle Toms would sit there, even shave Massa. Shave Massa, who was whipping and treating everybody like shit. He loved Massa so. Instead of just slitting the motherfucker's neck, right? And so you only have a family of, 5 white Massas and then a field of, 30? The same thing like the classroom. One fucking dictator, 30 fucking students, 5 white Massas, a whole fucking field full of black folks. And why did they not rebel? Why did they not get freedom? It was like they didn't understand. They didn't care. They didn't, solidarity would have got them freedom. It was also, it's almost might be human nature, but I think it's an American cultural thing. Because there was the Stanford prison experiments where they knew that they were just playing prisoners and guards, and yet the guards were being fucking barbaric and torturous. One guy tried to do a hunger strike, and all the other prisoners was yelling at him, "Oh, just do what he says, and we'll get past this. Just shut up and do as he says." But he's the one motherfucker that could have changed what the fuck was going on. If they all went on a hunger strike, this shit would have stopped. You knew it was a fucking experiment. You knew you was being tested. And so why didn't you want freedom? Why didn't the oppressed say, let's get some damn freedom? And Paulo Freire, he says that that's because the oppressed has a dual consciousness. They think of themselves, and then they think of their oppressor. They think of themselves, they think of their oppressor. So they say, well, what's good for me? Well, what's good for my oppressor? So they have empathy. And actually the reason that they are obedient is out of love. And so Paulo Freire goes to the next step and says that the weakness of the oppressed is what's going to get them freedom. That love that the oppressed has, the reason why they're obedient to their massa, that will be the fucking thing that gets them freedom. They will become free after that. And so, that's fucking genius. The oppressor, there's no love in the oppressor. They gotta fucking make you into an object to be manipulated and controlled. Only the oppressed, through their love, can actually stand up and change shit. Only the oppressed, can change their fucking circumstances. And they can liberate both the oppressor and the oppressed. But frankly, sometimes you just gotta fucking slit masses' throat, and so there's they've been indoctrinated, brainwashed, not educated. So there's things that were put in place, violence. There have been violence. If anybody even talked about a rebellion, there's always an Uncle Tom little snitch bitch, that'll fucking say, "Oh my God, Nat Turner was talking about rebelling and shit. I think you should do something." And so Nat Turner's actually a fucking hero today. He killed children, he killed white babies, but he was oppressed in slavery. So he just snapped. He read the Bible and Christianity and said the slaves will get free. We need freedom. And so when Nat Turner stood up, Nat Turner got some freedom, right? He got freedom for the time that he lived, and then he got killed, and then he was martyred. But for an oppressed people, I don't know. I don't know anybody that talks about Nat Turner sort of as being a bad thing. He did kill the babies. He did kill the fucking children, and that's horrendous. That's barbaric. But if you think of the terms and the times and how slavery was and how brutal it was and how barbaric it was, I think most people forgive his sort of ignorance, his willful ignorance about how he didn't, he was just kind of like, fuck it, let's get some guns and let's just start killing these motherfuckers, right? And then went from one plantation to the next plantation, just liberating everybody. So that's that's very similar. I mean, let's go back to the idea of Frederick Douglass. So he says that the limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of whom they oppress. Nat Turner had it. He didn't have no more endurance. I can't fucking do this shit no more. Sorry. And usually it's like the educated. I think he learned how to read, or he was like Mass's favorite or something. Frederick Douglass, he had learned how to read. One of the white women had taught him how to read, then or a little bit how to read, and then was like, "Don't teach him how to read, or he'll know that he's a fucking slave and he can't do the shit." And then he was like, "Oh damn, there's something to this reading." And then he says, actually, once he learned how to read, he was forever free. He was forever free. Malcolm X actually said something like that too. He says, put him in a room with books and he could just read forever. I enjoy reading. I enjoy reading. I enjoy reading. So, in light of these, ideas, Negroes will be hunted at the North and held and flogged at the South, so long as they submit to those devilish outrages and make no resistance, either moral or physical. Men may not get all they pay for in this world, but they must certainly pay for all they get. If we ever get free from the oppressions and wrongs heaped upon us, we must pay for their removal. We must do this by labor, by suffering, by sacrifice, and if needs be, by our lives and the lives of others. So, that's all Nat Turner right there. It's the Civil War, it's the Union, and it's even less, bloody, violent type of things. It's just, it's even with democracy, right? It's even with organizing and getting workers' rights and freedoms, right? It's striking, it's standing up, it's having solidarity. We're going to stand up, and, there's dying protests that they're having. There's sit-ins, a protest, they're marching out in the streets. There is resistance, and that's what he's saying is, if there is no resistance to the oppression will continue. So there's got to be a resistance, and really there's got to be, the resistance has to call for change, and the change has to happen in order for people to get free. And so I'm glad I sang that Samuel L. Jackson song. God, I'm so fucking glad I sang it, because it's embedded in me. Now that is in me, Samuel L. Jackson, right? I've memorized the words. I only sang it 2 or 3 times, but it's like, my neighbor is crying, I can't breathe. Now I'm stuck in the struggle and I can't leave. Calling out the violence of the racist police. We ain't gonna stop till people are free. We ain't gonna stop till people are free. That should be a fucking ASL challenge. It should be fucking spread like wildfire. I can't sing. Try to fucking sing. Seriously. And if I can't inspire you to sing, then just don't fucking do it. You don't want to fucking be free. You don't want the people to be free. The Eric Garner case, I think, is actually just absolutely phenomenal. It's a horrible thing that happened, but it's just such a clear fucking thing. They try to say Mike Brown was a thug and a bully and he robbed people and he was a dickhead and shit like that. And he very well could have been. I don't know the guy. I don't know shit about him. And I've known cops to be just fucking assholes for no fucking reason, right? $30,000 is what the fucking LMPD cost me because I was crossing the street and they tried to fucking run me over and they're fucking undercover. So I'm thinking I'm getting jumped by some dumb fucking racist redneck, bastard rat white trash motherfuckers. And they eventually says, hey, by the way, we're the cops. Oh, really? Why the fuck you trying to run me over? Why the fuck you cussing at me? Why are you jumping out in the middle of the street trying to fucking fight me, you piece of shit? And for a man or anybody to sit there and say that they would just accept that shit, you ain't a man. You don't have no dignity. You have no fucking love for yourself. People say, well, you should have just kept your mouth shut and kept on going. What the fuck? I'm fucking walking to the store. And they ain't protecting, and serving people in your own community. They ain't protecting and serving a goddamn fucking soul. So, we'll say this again. Men may not get all they pay for in this world, sort of like the work thing, but they must certainly pay for all that they get. So there must be effort. There must be agitation. Anything you get, it's got to come out of, you going out and getting it. So if we ever get free from the oppression and wrongs heaped upon us, we must pay for the removal. And we must do this by labor, by suffering, by sacrifice, and if needs be, by our lives and the lives of others. And so, agitation, resistance, he's saying rebellion. He's saying open revolution, violent revolution. That's what Frederick Douglass is saying right there. And I believe we could do it without violent revolution if there is solidarity, worker strikes. Martin Luther King, we did get the Civil Rights Act of 1964 passed. Gandhi was able to, get changes that had happened, but, they were martyred. They were murdered. And then we're supposed to celebrate them and not think about their actual life and what they were talking about. MLK was against the Vietnam War. MLK was, he died for the garbage workers. They were striking and the garbage workers wanted, better working conditions. And that's what MLK died for. So, the failure of the civil rights movement, turned into the Black Power movement, and so there's something to that. There's something to sort of what Malcolm X was saying, that you got to stand up like men. I don't look down on MLK whatsoever at all. He's not a Booker T. Washington. I don't think of him as a Booker T. I think MLK was revolutionary, in your face, nonviolent. So he was sitting in the place, the segregated counters. So he was like, all black people ain't allowed to sit here. Well, what if I just sit right here like this? And you say this is a problem. This is a problem. Pow, pow, pow. Okay, I guess it is a problem. But he got the cameras and he got the media, right? And he got the fucking movement going. So he was nonviolent in your face. Nonviolent in your face. So there's something amazing about that, So Frederick Douglass, quotable quotes. That's I think I'm gonna call it a night with that. But I do want to see, actually, I guess I want to talk about the this speech, which actually that quote comes from. He says right here is where it says, right, find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you found out the exact measure of the injustice. And that's right in the middle of this speech, right? There's all these words on top. There's all these words on bottom. What is this speech even about? This is it. This is done in August 3rd, 1857. So this is before the Civil War happened. It's 1861, 4 years before the Civil War began. And he was delivering a West India emancipation in New York. So he's just talking about the Caribbean islands. This is what the Caribbean islands need to do if they want freedom. And there's sugar plantations and some shit, in the West Indies. Even my Blanchett ancestry had French plantations, right? My German ancestry were not. I think they were dirt poor farmers, but evidently they had some land, so they had some stature, right? They weren't a king or queen, but they had some stature. Most of the address was a history of British efforts towards emancipation, as well as a reminder of the crucial role of the West Indian slaves in that own freedom struggle. However, shortly after he began, Douglass sounded a foretelling of the coming Civil War when he uttered 2 paragraphs that became the most quoted sentences of all his public orations. They began with the words, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." The entire speech appears below. So they're saying the most quoted sentences actually comes out of this speech, right? So I'm going to end this off right now. A little bit of quotes of Frederick Douglass. I'm going to finish up with the Frederick Douglass speech, and then I'm going to do some Nietzsche. I got a whole bunch of quotes of Nietzsche here that I compiled. You shouldn't learn people through quotes, but sometimes it's easier than kind of like understanding their entire fucking worldview. Hey, I like that quote. That quote's a good quote. And then try to mash it all together somehow. Yeah. So, revolutionary theory. Rise up, people. Viva la revolution. Love, peace, humanity, honor, dignity. These are the morals that I have, the biggest things that I have for you. Golden rule, doing those, you have them doing yourself. The big four: don't murder, don't rape, don't steal, and don't hit. So stop with the fucking child abuse. If you're abusing your kids, you ain't got no fucking morals. Fuck you.